So this is lab 4 on induction. So in this lab we'll again be using the iolab device. We'll be using the 2 AA battery pack. We'll be using one of the jumper wires, so if you find whatever the longest one you have is, that would work best. Alternatively, you could use, instead of this, you could use the coil of wire that you created in lab 3. We'll use the magnets, and so now be careful with these magnets. They're really strong. I put them in this plastic test tube with the cap on it. There's 2 of them in there actually, but they essentially, they're stuck together, so they essentially form one large magnet, and it acts like a bar magnet. So you don't actually have to take them out of here if you don't want to. I recommend not doing it anyway. That way it won't jump and catch anything as easily, and if it does, it's easier to take apart. So just be careful. They're really strong. So you want to keep them away from anything like your cell phone, your laptop, any kind of credit card, debit card, your ID card, things like that have some sort of magnetic strip or something in them. So you want to be careful to avoid that. We'll again use the mystery coil from lab 3 and also the breadboard. And if you do decide to use your coil from lab 3 instead of the long jumper cable, then you probably want to use the conductive tape and some of the shorter jumper cables just to help plug it into the breadboard or the iolab device. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to plug the mystery coil into the iolab device. Now, on the iolab device, you'll notice there's a bunch of ports, and we're going to use the one that's labeled A7 here. And so you could plug one end of the coil into A7 and another one into any of these ones you want that says GND, that stands for ground. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to go into your iolab software. Okay, so if your iolab software is not open yet, open it now, and then go ahead and turn on your iolab device. Make sure that you're connected up here, and then we'll choose from the sensor list the one that's called analog 7. Okay, so this will measure the voltage that's actually going to be passing through the coil of wire. And it's going to be really hard to see, so what I'm going to say for you to do is go down here to the cog wheel, the little where you put your hover over it and it says y-axis settings, and under max value let's put 0.1 and min value minus 0.1. That's what I found it to zoom into pretty well with this coil and the magnet you're going to use. Okay, and so what you're going to do is you'll start recording, and then you're going to want to bring the magnet toward the coil and push it into the coil, push it in and out, try it slower, faster, and just see what happens with that. Then next we're going to use the high gain sensor on the iolab device. So those are indicated by the G plus and G minus ports, so we'll just plug into those ports. And then in your software, we can go ahead and we'll just reset all that. And then the high gain, you'll find that down here on the sensor list. And so the difference here is that what you saw before with the analog 7 sensor is that it only read positive, right? So it's actually was just reading the magnitude of the voltage. It didn't have any direction there. So the high gain sensor, it really amplifies what we're reading, so the numbers don't have too much meaning to them, but it allows us to see the direction that the current's flowing. So we'll repeat what we did just before. We'll click record, and again we'll try moving it, and you'll see it kind of goes beyond what we have there. As far as a range on the software graph. So what you probably want to try doing is doing it a little bit slower, and then you can also go ahead over here and you can try to move it around, zoom out a bit. So over here, the little plus sign, if you do that, you can click and drag, and you see that it's basically going to no more than 1.2. So if we change the max values to 1.2 and the min values to minus 1.2, then we kind of see everything in there. So don't concern yourself too much about the numbers here. I want you to concern yourself about what's happening. Is it going positive or negative as you move the magnet toward the coil and through the coil? And then we'll have you try a couple other things, like in the description, where you'll hold you try to get the magnet over toward this end. So basically, like what I said, it's like a bar magnet. So one end will be north, one end will be south. You can't really tell which one it is yet. You can figure that out though through this experiment. So I'll just kind of tip them over to the cap end, and then you're going to try. So like I say in the instructions, just read those carefully. What to do? You're going to want to push it toward and pull it away from the coil like this, and then try to flip them over to the bottom end of the tube and just kind of repeat that procedure. That way it'll just you see what happens when you put different ends of the magnet, north or south, toward the coil, and then you can repeat that on the other side of the coil, pushing away and pulling, pushing toward and pulling away. And also what you can do is you want to try to just put the magnet in the center of the coil while you're recording, and don't move it. Just see what happens when it's just at rest in the coil. And so in part two, we're going to kind of do the opposite. We're going to actually put the magnet down and leave the magnet, let that be at rest, and then we're going to move the coil around. So you can use this with the high gain sensor again, and just move the coil toward and away from the magnet. Try it quicker or faster. Try flipping the coil over, right? And what that essentially will do is just switch the direction that you have the coil pointing in, right? Whether it's the positive or minus. So you could even switch them on the ports if you wanted to. Then in the final part of this lab, we're going to take our Mr. coil out. We'll just plug that into the breadboard. So we'll just plug it into the plus and minus, because all we're really going to do here is we're just going to connect that to the battery pack. And it doesn't really matter whether you put which end you put plus or minus in. Okay, just so long as we're forming a circuit to make the coil. So as long as you got one end of the coil in positive and one in negative, and then one end of the battery pack in positive and negative, then you're good to go. And then it's at this point that you're going to hook up your pickup, what we call pickup coil. So you can either use one of the jumper cables, or you can use the coil that you created in the last one. Really doesn't matter. And we'll again plug those into the high gain sensor, and we're just going to make like a little coil out of it, right? And that's what's going to kind of basically read. It's sort of like an antenna. It's going to read what's passing through this coil. All right, so we'll go ahead and click record, and then we'll turn the battery pack on and off. And you can zoom in if you want to, but you can make some observations what happens there. You can flip the coil over, or you can switch where it's plugged into the breadboard and try that again and make some observations there. Okay, and that's basically it for Lab 4.